Picture this. It's still dark outside, that heavy kind of darkness that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. And somewhere in that silence, an email slips into Jasmine Crockett's inbox. No subject line, no sender name, just 2 words in the sender field. Unknown Patriot. She doesn't see it right away. Her phone is face down on the nightstand, notifications muted. But when the first thin line of daylight touches her window, she reaches for her phone out of habit. That's when she notices it. One unread message, no preview text, no traceable address. What you're about to hear is the story of how that single email exposed the biggest corruption scandal in Supreme Court history. A scandal involving cryptocurrency, offshore accounts, and $890 million that would shake the very foundation of American justice. She opens the email. Inside is a single attachment, a PDF over 200 megabytes in size. The file name is just a string of numbers and letters, meaningless on its own. But the moment she clicks to open it, her screen fills with rows and rows of transactions. Not just a few. 312 separate entries, each one tagged with amounts that make her heart pound faster. This isn't some random financial document. This is a ledger of cryptocurrency transfers. Every line time-stamped, every transfer logged, every recipient address visible in cold black text. And when she scans to the bottom, the number makes her stop breathing for a second. $890 million. She leans closer to the screen, scrolling faster now. 7 different exchanges for cold wallets, 2 banks in the Caribbean that she knows by name. Banks that have shown up in investigative reports before. And in the notes column of certain entries, something more chilling. Patterns, dates, references to legal case numbers she recognizes. Her mind starts connecting the dots on instinct. She spent years chasing down corruption. But this is different. This isn't a tip. This is evidence. Pure, unfiltered, impossible to ignore evidence. Then she notices something else. On page 27 of the document, one recipient address repeats more than any other. She doesn't need to run it through a blockchain tracker to know what it means. She's seen this address before, buried deep in a financial disclosure that was never meant to be public. And next to it, a date that lines up perfectly with a controversial Supreme Court decision. She whispers a name in her head, but doesn't let it pass her lips. Not yet. Her eyes move back to the top of the email. Under the sender name, there's a single line of text. No greeting, no explanation, just one sentence. This is what they didn't want you to find. Can you believe this? Her stomach tightens. Whoever sent this isn't guessing. They know exactly what this is and exactly who it will implicate. She closes the file and reopens it again as if to confirm it's real. Same pages, same amounts, same damning trail transactions. For a moment, she just sits there, the quiet of the morning pressing around her. If this is what it appears to be, it isn't just a financial scandal. It's a direct link between massive concealed transfers of wealth and judicial influence at the highest level. She pushes her chair back and stands up, no hesitation. She reaches for a printer, hits print all, and watches the pages start feeding out. Page after page, heavy with ink, smelling faintly of heat and toner. Each sheet feels like it carries weight beyond its paper, evidence that could shake the foundation of the justice system if handled right. When the last page slides into the tray, she gathers the stack in both hands. It's thick enough to require a firm grip. She presses the edges together, squares the pile, and sets it down on her desk. Her eyes are hard now, focused. She has no idea who Unknown Patriot really is or why they chose her, but she knows one thing. Once this leaves her hands and enters the record, there will be no turning back. Somewhere deep inside, she can already hear the gears of a machine starting to turn. A machine built to resist, to deny, to bury the truth. But she also feels something else. Resolve. She reaches for her phone again, this time to make a call. No notes, no warnings, just a simple message to her aide. Clear my schedule for tomorrow. Everything else can wait. The aide texts back a question mark. She doesn't answer. Instead, she looks down at the stack of papers one more time. The number at the bottom of the last page catches her eye again. $890 million. She whispers it under her breath like it's a code, a password to a door that's about to open. And then quietly, she says to herself, one email and the whole foundation of American justice is about to shake. Little did she know, this was just the beginning. The hearing room is already full when Jasmine Crockett walks in. Every seat behind the press table is taken. Photographers lean forward with cameras ready, waiting for anything to happen. The air has that electric stillness you feel right before a storm. She doesn't take her time. She doesn't make small talk. She walks straight to her seat, sets her bag down, and places a thick stack of documents on the table in front of her. The sound it makes when it hits the wood, sharp, heavy, deliberate, draws every eye in the room. No preamble, no pleasantries. She leans toward the microphone, her voice calm but steady enough to cut through the hum of the room. $890 million, she begins, letting the number sit in the air for a moment. That's the total amount that has been moved, hidden, laundered through 7 different cryptocurrency exchanges, for cold wallets and 2 banks in the Caribbean. The murmurs begin immediately. She doesn't pause to acknowledge them. And every single path, every coin, every transfer leads to one name, one person. That's the moment she sees him shift. Justice Clarence Thomas sits across the table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. His face doesn't move much, but his knuckles do. They turn a shade whiter as the pressure increases. Jasmine's eyes don't leave him. This isn't speculation. This isn't rumor. These are verified transactions. Every step traced, every connection documented. The chair of the committee clears his throat as if to interrupt. But Jasmine raises a hand slightly, not in defiance, but in precision. This is a public hearing, and the American people have a right to know exactly how deep this goes. The rustle of papers, the clicks of pens, the quiet scratch of notes being taken. It's all background noise now. The focus is locked on her, and she knows it. I have in my hands, she says, resting a palm on the documents, the transaction logs, the exchange IDs, the wallet addresses, and the receiving accounts that link directly to decisions made from this very bench. She lets the last word hang in the air. Bench. Not courtroom, not government. Bench. It's deliberate because everyone in the room knows what it means. The Supreme Court. A reporter shifts in his seat, raising his phone to record. Another leans forward, pen frozen mid-sentence. You can dispute my politics, she says evenly, but you cannot dispute the math, and you cannot dispute the dates. Her words land like stones in water, rippling through the room. She reaches the first page, sliding it forward just enough for the committee to see. Here's one. $45 million transferred to a cold wallet. Same day, the exact same day, a decision was handed down that benefited the donor who made the transfer. The room doesn't just murmur this time. It stirs. Journalists whisper to each other. Someone's pen scratches faster. The energy shifts and she can feel it. She glances back at Thomas. He isn't leaning forward anymore. He's sitting back now, arms crossed, jaw tight, but she can see the tension in his shoulders. This is just one, she says softly. There are 311 more. It isn't loud, but the way she says it makes the words feel heavier. For a few seconds, no one moves. It's as if the entire room has been told to hold still and listen. And then, without breaking her gaze in the stack of papers, Jasmine adds, "We will go through as many as this session allows. And for every single one, the people deserve an answer. But wait until you hear what happens next, because what she's about to reveal will prove this isn't just about money. It's about a coordinated system designed to influence the highest court in the land." Jasmine doesn't waste time. She reaches for a small remote, clicks once, and the large monitor behind her lights up. On the screen appears a clean black and white chain of numbers and letters, lines of blockchain data. Each one is a transaction. Each one has a timestamp. And each one is impossible to erase. This, she begins, pointing at the screen, is the part they can't deny. You can destroy paper. You can shred contracts. You can delete emails. But you cannot erase the blockchain. Her voice is steady, but her eyes keep moving between the data and the man sitting opposite her. Every number here represents movement, $45 million worth of Bitcoin, moved at 9:47 a.m. on a date that should sound very familiar to everyone in this room. She presses another button. The screen splits into two. On one side, the blockchain transaction. On the other, an official court docket from the Supreme Court's own records. The dates match perfectly. That, she says, turning back to the committee, is the same day a decision was handed down in favor of a corporation that stood to gain billions from the outcome. And that corporation CEO, a man whose offshore accounts were already under federal review until review was suddenly closed without explanation. The committee room grows quieter. The low hum of the AC fills the pause, but no one speaks. I want you to notice something else, Jasmine says, gesturing toward the left side of the screen. This wallet address right here appears in 47 separate transactions over a 9-month period, always connected to the same small network of wallets, always just before or just after key rulings. And if you cross-reference those rulings with the outcomes, there's a pattern so obvious you'd have to close your eyes not to see it. She clicks again. The screen now displays a chart. Bars in deep red and blue, rising and falling like a heartbeat. This is a timeline. These spikes, they line up with the largest cryptocurrency transfers. These vertical lines, major court decisions. Look at how they overlap. The chart doesn't just tell a story. It screams one. Thomas shifts again, but this time he doesn't try to hide it. His eyes stay on the table, his jaw clenched. One of those spikes is bigger than the rest. That's the $45 million. And that's the day when you, Justice Thomas, authored the majority opinion in a case that rewrote the rules for corporate liability. She lets the words hang there. No accusation, no shouting, just fact. When she steps back to her seat, she doesn't sit right away. Instead, she places her hands on the table and leans forward slightly. I want to be clear. What we are looking at isn't politics. It isn't partisanship. It's math. And math doesn't care about ideology. This is where it gets crazy. Because what she's about to show isn't just numbers on a screen. It's a photograph that will change everything. The silence that follows Jasmine's last words isn't empty. It's loaded. The kind of silence where you can hear the weight of what's just been said settling into the room. She glances down at her stack of documents, knowing the next move isn't even hers to make. And then from 2 seats down, a voice breaks the stillness. Madam Chair, may I? It's Representative Hale. Not someone who usually jumps into the spotlight during these hearings. He's a quiet operator, known more for his behind-the-scenes work than for public confrontations. But this time, he leans forward, sliding something across the polished wood toward the clerk. The clerk takes it, a manila envelope sealed with a strip of red tape, and walks it over to the projection technician in the corner. No one knows what's inside yet, but the energy in the room shifts instantly. The technician opens the envelope, pulls out a glossy 8x10 photograph, and places it on the scanner. Seconds later, the image fills the main screen above the committee. It isn't grainy. It isn't blurred. This isn't the kind of shadowy maybe photo that could be waved away as coincidence. The lighting is clear. The face is sharper than anyone expected. And right there in full color is Clarence Thomas. Not in a courtroom, not in a private residence, but sitting across a small cafe table from a man every journalist in the financial crime beat would recognize, the CEO of one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the world. The timestamp in the bottom right corner reads 8:32 a.m. The date is 2 weeks before one of the largest unexplained crypto transfers in the blockchain timeline Jasmine just showed. A low hum fills the room. People lean forward. A few reporters raise their cameras, not to take a picture of the photo. They already have it on a live stream feed, but to capture Thomas's reaction. Thomas's jaw moves slightly. This does not prove anything. I have coffee with many people. Meetings do not equal misconduct. Hale doesn't smile. With respect, Justice Thomas, the man you were meeting with is currently under active investigation by at least 3 federal agencies for currency manipulation and money laundering. And the meeting took place days before a key transfer tied directly to your rulings. Thomas's hand twitches on the table. Are you suggesting? Jasmine cuts in smoothly, her tone precise. No one here is suggesting anything without evidence, Justice Thomas. But the thing about photographs is they don't need to suggest. They show. Her gaze moves from the screen back to him, locking in place like a pin. And when the image on that screen lines up with the blockchain data, the timeline, and the outcome of a Supreme Court case, the American people deserve more than, "I have coffee with many people." The chair of the committee shifts uncomfortably, clearly aware of how explosive this is becoming. Representative Hale, do you have more context for this image? Hale nods. I do, and I believe Representative Crockett should read it. The clerk delivers a single sheet of paper to Jasmine. She doesn't even glance at it before beginning to read aloud. Her voice steady, measured, the way you read something you want every person in the room to hear exactly as it's written. Granted, the chair replies. She steps toward the dais, takes the envelope from the chair's hands, and breaks the seal in one smooth motion. Inside is a single sheet of paper with a string of characters printed in bold type, a decryption key. For a moment, the audience might not understand the significance, but Thomas understands. And that's enough. This, Jasmine explains, holding the page so the committee can see, is the access key to a locked file contained in the same email archive as the exit strategy letter. Until now, that file was encrypted and inaccessible without this exact key. The source of the key is confirmed by federal investigators. Thomas leans forward slightly, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Madam Chair, I object to the inclusion of unverified. Jasmine cuts him before he can finish. The verification is precisely why the FBI is here today, Justice Thomas. They're not in the business of handing over unverified material during a live session of Congress. The taller agent, still standing near the back, doesn't react outwardly, but his presence says enough. Jasmine moves to the committee's secure laptop, logs in, and navigates to the email archive that had been provided earlier in the investigation. The locked file sits there, its name a bland sequence of numbers and letters, almost boring if not for the fact that it had resisted every attempt to open it for the past 2 weeks. She types in the key. For a beat, nothing happens. Then the screen flickers and a new document opens. It's a list, 18 names. Jasmine reads the first few aloud. 2 high-ranking government officials, a prominent lobbyist, a business magnate whose face is as familiar on financial magazine covers as it is in political donor reports. She pauses, scanning further down the list. This document identifies each individual as part of what the file itself labels the protection network. It matches wallet IDs, corporate entities, and offshore accounts to each name, creating a direct chain from digital transactions to real-world ownership. A low murmur spreads through the room like an incoming tide. In the press section, phones are already out, screens lighting up as reporters type furiously. Thomas shifts again, this time loosening his tie. Representative Crockett, you're reading from a document that could easily be fabricated. The presence of names means nothing without context. The context, Jasmine interrupts, is that these names appear in the same encrypted archive as the exit strategy email. Same IP, same timestamp window. And now, thanks to this key, the same verifiable metadata tying them to the transactions we've been tracking for months. This isn't coincidence. It's continuity. She lets that word hang in the air. Continuity. It has a weight to it. The kind of weight that makes denial harder to maintain. One by one, she moves down the list. The business magnate who had been seen entering the same private jet hangar as Thomas. The political strategist who had quietly purchased a Caribbean estate just days after an untraceable coin transfer hit their account. The 2 state-level officials whose re-election campaigns have been funded by a mysterious pact later dissolved without filing final disclosures. With each connection, the picture sharpens. The blockchain addresses are no longer random strings of characters. They're names, faces, and bank statements. The offshore companies are no longer anonymous post office boxes in tax havens. They're properties, trusts, and board memberships. These 18 names represent a cross-section of influence: legislative, judicial, corporate, media. It's not an accident. It's a network, one designed to insulate itself from accountability by dispersing its assets and its power across multiple fronts. But when you follow the transactions, those fronts collapse into a single point of origin. She pauses, letting the words hang in the thick air. That point of origin is here, in this room. Thomas doesn't speak. His expression has hardened into the kind of stillness that looks like resolve but feels, to everyone watching, like retreat. Jasmine closes the file and hands the decryption key to the clerk for entry into the record. The truth doesn't vanish because it's locked away. It just waits for the right key. And as she returns to her seat, the realization settles over the room. The lock has been broken. The rest of the hearing will be about what spills out. What she reveals next will prove beyond any doubt that this goes all the way to the top, because every single transaction leads back to one person, and the evidence is about to become undeniable. Jasmine doesn't rush. She knows the next step isn't about overwhelming the room with more names or bigger numbers. It's about drawing a single unbroken line from the chaos of transactions to one undeniable, immovable conclusion. She reaches for the next page in the stack. The list of 18 names is powerful, but what matters most is how they connect. And every single one of those connections leads through the same sequence. She turns the page toward herself, eyes scanning the print as if to reaffirm something she already knows by heart. First, we have the cryptocurrency transfers. Multiple streams, multiple exchanges, all eventually converging into the same set of cold wallets. These wallets were designed for long-term storage, not active trading, which means they weren't meant to grow wealth through risk. They were meant to hold it, secure it, hide it. She lets the last word rest for a beat. Hide. It lands heavier than any technical term could. From those cold wallets, the funds moved to offshore banks in the Bahamas, Cayman Islands, and one particularly discreet institution in St. Kitts. These transfers were layered, broken into smaller amounts to avoid detection. But the blockchain doesn't forget. Even when you try to disguise a path, every step is recorded. The committee members lean in now. Even those who had been skeptical earlier are following. Jasmine can feel their attention tightening around her words. Once the money was safely in offshore accounts, it didn't sit idle. It flowed into shell corporations, companies that exist only on paper with no employees, no offices, just a registered address in a jurisdiction where the law doesn't ask questions. A few reporters glance at one another knowingly. They've covered enough corporate scandals to recognize the pattern. These companies purchased assets that look legitimate on the surface. Luxury real estate in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. Properties bought not to live in, not to rent, but to park value in plain sight. She taps the page once softly. But here's where the trail stops being just financial and becomes personal. She flips to a highlighted line in the documents. One of these shell companies, registered under a holding group in the British Virgin Islands, purchased a penthouse in D.C. for $32 million. That penthouse is 2 blocks from this very building, and the title holder of that property, after the shell company dissolved, was transferred to a trust. She looks directly at Thomas. A trust bearing the name of your family foundation. The air goes sharp. There's no murmur this time, no shifting of papers, just a collective intake of breath that comes when everyone realizes the end of the line is no longer theoretical. Thomas doesn't move. His eyes stay on her, but there's no question that the weight of the moment has settled squarely on his shoulders. This is not guilt by association. Jasmine says evenly, this is the record. The same record that began with a cryptocurrency transaction and now ends with property in your circle's direct control. Every step is documented, time-stamped, and verified. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't have to. The strength is in the clarity, in the fact that there's no room left for ambiguity. This is why the email we received wasn't just a tip. It was a map that, when followed, doesn't wander. It leads here. It ends here. A few committee members glance toward the FBI agents, still seated at the back of the room. The agents don't react, but their presence now feels heavier, more deliberate. Jasmine sets the papers back on the table and folds her hands over them. The American people are told to trust the system. They are told that no one is above the law, but trust requires proof. And today we put that proof into the record. She lets the silence after those words stretch. Not the awkward silence of a stalled conversation, but the deliberate pause of someone who has just locked the final piece of a puzzle into place. But what happens next will be the moment that changes everything forever. Because Jasmine is about to deliver the final blow that will make it impossible for anyone to deny the truth. Jasmine doesn't shuffle her papers. She doesn't look down. She locks her gaze on Thomas, as if every word she's about to speak has been rehearsed for this exact second in history. "I want to read something to you," she says, her voice steady. It's the final line from the anonymous email that started this. She lifts the printed page, but her eyes stay on him. If this gets out, he's not just losing the court. He's losing everything. The words hang in the air, not rushed, not softened. They land like the sound of a gavel striking wood. "You know what that means, Justice Thomas?" she asks, the question almost conversational. It means whoever sent this knew the stakes. They understood that the truth, once visible, is more than embarrassment. It's accountability. And for someone who's built a life behind layers of influence and untouchability, accountability feels like everything. No one in the room shifts. The kind of stillness that comes when everyone is holding their breath has taken over. Jasmine leans in slightly. This isn't about personal animosity. It's not about politics. It's about whether a person entrusted with interpreting the highest laws of this nation can operate under a separate set of rules. Rules where wealth and secrecy override duty and honor. She lets the moment breathe. Then she adds, "That's not how the law is supposed to work. Not here, not anywhere." Her voice stays even, but there's an undeniable charge in it now. The undercurrent of someone who knows a point has been proven. You can deny the photographs. You can downplay the meetings. You can even question the credibility of the source. But you cannot undo the chain of transactions. You cannot erase the timestamps. And you cannot hide from the fact that the trail, every coin, every transfer, every property, leads back to you. For a second, she almost looks away, almost gives him the out of disengagement. But she doesn't. The truth is here. And once it's here, it doesn't go back into the shadows. That's why the person who sent this said, "You'd lose everything." Because the truth doesn't care about titles. It doesn't care about robes or offices or legacies. A faint hum from the live stream gear fills the pause. The kind of background sound that normally gets lost in the noise, but now seems amplified by the silence of the room. Jasmine finally sets the page down. You can choose to respond now, or you can wait until the proper legal proceedings begin. But what you can't do is pretend this never happened. The American people have seen it. They've heard it, and they will remember it. Thomas's lips part as if he might speak, but no words come. It isn't that he's interrupted. It's that there's nothing left to counter with that wooden collapse under the weight of the evidence already presented. Jasmine leans back, not in retreat, but in closure. For too long, those in power have counted on complexity to shield them. The idea that if the scheme is too intricate, too technical, too hidden, no one will take the time to understand it. Well, today we took the time. And now the rest of the country will too. It isn't a shout. It isn't a grand flourish. But it doesn't need to be. The words themselves are the strike. The kind that doesn't fade when the sound ends. The kind that lodges itself in the mind and stays there. Somewhere in the gallery, a single clap rings out. Not loud, not defiant. Just enough to mark the moment. Then another, and another, until the steady rhythm of applause fills the room. Not wild or celebratory, but deliberate, like the slow toll of a bell. Jasmine doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. The point has been made, and everyone knows it. The applause inside the hearing room hasn't even finished echoing when the ripple begins. Phones light up in every row. Reporters type with the urgency of people who know they're witnessing the lead story of the day, maybe the month. By the time Jasmine steps back from the microphone, the hashtags are already climbing. Hashtag CoinGate. Hashtag Thomas Files. The names pulse at the top of trending lists, moving so fast that other stories that had dominated for days are shoved down and out of sight. On cable news, anchors interrupt mid-segment. We're getting breaking development from Capitol Hill. One voice says, social media feeds explode. Clips of Jasmine reading that single line from the anonymous email. He's not just losing the court, he's losing everything. Loop over and over, stitched into countless posts. In living rooms across the country, people stop what they're doing to watch. Some sit in silence. Some cheer openly. Others shake their heads, not in disbelief, but in the recognition of something they'd long suspected finally laid bare. By early afternoon, it isn't just the political networks carrying the footage. International outlets have picked it up. Headlines run in languages from Spanish to Arabic to Japanese. And while the news cycle can sometimes chew up and spit out even the biggest stories in hours, this one is different. It has weight. It has a narrative people can follow. Within hours, statements start to appear. Law professors analyze the possible legal outcomes. Advocacy groups issue calls for